Guys, welcome to my channel. We are reading oh my goodness, my cat. We are reading Little Women. We are on chapter 9 on this one. I can't wait to finish this book though, because it is awesome, but I've been reading it too much. Yeah. And I still got this much to do. But I'm just gonna start reading. Chapter 9. Meg goes to Vanity Fair. I do think it was the most fortunate thing in the world that those children should have the measles just now, said Meg, one April day, as she stood packing the go-a-boarding truck. And so nice of Annie Moffat not to forget her promise. A whole fortnight of fun will be splendid, replied Jo, looking like a windmill as she folded skirts with her long arms. And such lovely weather. I'm so glad of that, added Beth, tidily sorting neck and hair ribbons. I wish I was going to wear all these nice things, said Amy. I wish you were all going, but as you can't, I shall keep my adventures to tell you when I come back. It's at least I can do. When you have been so kind, lending me things and helping me get ready, said Meg, glancing round the room at the simple outfit which seemed nearly perfect in their eyes. What did Mother give you out of the treasure box? Asked Amy. A pair of silk stockings, and that pretty carved fan, and a lovely blue sash. I wanted the violet silk, but there isn't time to make it over, so I must be contented with my old tartan. It will look nicely over my new muslin skirt, and the sash will set it off beautifully. I wish I hadn't smashed my coral bracelet for you. Might have had it, said Jo, who loved to give and lend. There is a lovely old-fashioned pearl set in the treasure box, but Mother said real flowers were the prettiest ornament for a young lady. And Laurie promised to send me all I want, replied Meg. Now let me see. There's my new gray walking suit. Just curl up in the feather in my hat, Beth. Then my poplin for Sunday. And the small party, it looks heavy for spring, doesn't it? The violet silk would be nice. Oh dear. Never mind. You got the tarlatan for the big party, and you always look like an angel in white, said Amy. It isn't low-necked, and it doesn't sweep enough, but it will have to do. My silk stockings and 2 pairs of Spandy's gloves are my comfort. You are a dear to lend me yours, Jo. I feel so elegant with 2 new pairs, and the old ones cleaned up for comment. And Megan took a refreshing peep at her glove box. I wonder if I shall ever be happy enough to have real lace on my clothes and bow on my caps. You said the other day that you'd be perfectly happy if you could only go to Annie Moffat's, observed Beth in her quiet way. So I did. Well, I am happy. I won't freak, but it does seem as if the more one gets, the more one wants, doesn't it? There now. The trays are ready and everything in but my ball dress, which I shall leave for Mother, said Meg, cheering up as she glanced from the half-filled trunk to the many times pressed and mended white tarlatan, which she called the ball dress. With an important air, the Moffats were very fashionable and simple. Meg was rather damped at first, but the splendor of the house and elegance of its occupants, it was agreeable to fare sumptuously, drive in a fine carriage, wear her best folks every day, and do not but enjoy herself. Soon she began to imitate the manners of conversation of those about her, to put on little airs and graces, and talk about the fashions, and the more she saw the Annie Moffat's pretty things, the more she invited them. When the evening for the small party came, she found that the poplin wouldn't do all it at all. So out came the Tarleton, looking older, limper, and shabbier than ever. Besides Sally's crispy new one. No one said a word about it, but Sally's offered to do her hair, and Annie to tie her sash, and Belle, the engaged sister, praised her with white arms. But in their kindness, Meg saw only pity for her poverty, and her heart felt very heavy. And the hard, bitter feeling was getting pretty bad. When the maid brought in a box of flowers, before she could speak, Annie had to cover off, and all were exclaiming at the lovely roses, heath, and ferns within. It's for Belle, of course. George always sends her some, but these are altogether ravishing, cried Annie, with a great sniff. They are for Miss March, the man said, and here's a note. Put in the maid, holding it to Meg. Oh my gosh. Put in the maid, holding it to Meg. What fun! Who are they from? Didn't know you had a lover, cried the girls. The note is from Mother, and the flowers from Laurie, said Meg simply. Oh, indeed, said Annie, with a funny look, as Meg slipped the note into her pocket as a sort of talisman against envy, vanity, and false pride. For a few loving words had done her good, and the flowers cheered her up by their beauty. Feeling almost happy again, she laid by a few ferns and roses for herself, and made up the rest of the dainty bouquets for the breasts, hair, or skirts of her friends, offering them so pretty that Clara, the elder sister, told her she was the sweetest little thing she ever saw. Somehow the kind act finished her despondency, and when all the rest went to show themselves to Miss March, she saw the happy, bright-eyed face in the mirror as she laid her ferns against her rippling hair, and fastened the roses on her dress that didn't strike her as so very shabby now. She enjoyed herself very much that evening, for she danced her heart content. Everyone was very kind, and she had 3 compliments. Annie made her sing, and someone said she had a remarkable fine voice. Major Lincoln asked who was the fresh little girl with the beautiful eyes was, and Mr. Moffat insisted on dancing with her because she didn't do well, but had some spring in her. So altogether she had a very nice time till she overheard a bit conversation. She was sitting just inside the conservatory, waiting for her partner to bring her an ice, when she heard a voice ask, "How old is she?" 16 or 17, I should say, replied another voice. It would be a grand thing for one of those girls, wouldn't it? Miss M had laid her plans, I dare say. I will play her cards well, and the girl I eventually didn't think of it yet, said Miss Moffat. She told that fib about her mamma as if she didn't know, and colored up when the flowers came quite prettily. Poor thing. She'd be so nice if she was only got up in style. Do she think she'd be offended if we offered her lend her a dress for Thursday? Asked another voice. She's proud, but I don't believe she mind, for that dowdy tartane is all she has got. She may tear it tonight, and that will be a good excuse for offering a decent one. We'll see. I shall ask that Lawrence has as a compliment to her, and we'll have fun about it afterwards. Here Meg's partner appeared to find her looking fainish and agitated. She was proud, and her pride was useful. just then, for it helped her hide her anger and disgust as what she had just heard. For innocent as she was, she could not help understanding the gossip of her friends. She did her best to seem gay and succeeded so well that no one dreamed what an effort she was making. Poor Meg had a restless night and got up heavy eyed. Something in the manner of her friends struck Meg at once. They treated her with more respect and thought, and looked at her with eyes and plainly betrayed courtesy. All this surprised the flat and flattered her, though she did not understand it till Miss Bell said with a sentimental air, "Daisy, dear, I've sent an invitation to your friend Mr. Lawrence for Thursday." May colored, but mischievously fancied to tease the girl, made her reply demurely, "You are very kind, but I am not afraid. He won't come." "Why not, Sherry?" asked Miss Bell. "He's too old." "My child, what do you mean? What is his age, I beg to know?" cried Miss Clare. "Nearly 70, I believe," answered Meg. This is going to be a long chapter, guys, but that's all right. "You slay creature, of course we meant he, young man," exclaimed Miss Bell, laughing. "There isn't any Laurie, is only the little boy, about your age," Nan said. Nearer my sister, Jo. "I am 17 in August," returned Meg, tossing her head. "It's very nice of him to send you flowers, isn't it?" said Annie. "Yes, he often does, at all of us, for their house is full, and we are so fond of them. My mother and old Lawrence are friends, so it's quite natural. We children should play together." "It's evident Daisy isn't out yet," said Miss Clara to Belle with a nod. "I am going out to get some little manners for my girls." "Can I do anything for you, young ladies?" asked Miss Moffat, lumbering in like an elegant in silk and lace. "No, thank you, ma'am," replied Sally. "I've got my new pink silk for Thursday, and I don't want a thing." "Nor I," began Meg, but stopped because it occurred to her that she did want several things and could not have them. "What shall you wear?" asked Sally. "My old white one, if I can mend it to fit to seam. It got sadly torn last night," said Meg. "Why don't you send home for another?" asked Sally, who was not any observing young lady. "I haven't got any other." It it cost Meg an effort to say that, but Sally did not see it, and exclaimed in amiable surprise only that. "How funny!" She did not finish her speech, for Bella shook her head at her and broke in, saying kindly, "Not at all. Where is the use of having a lot of dresses when she isn't out? I've got a sweet blue silk laid away, which I've outgrown, and you shall wear it to please me." "You are very kind, but I don't mind my old dress if you don't. It does well enough for a little girl like me," said Meg. "Now, do let me please myself by dressing you up in style. You'd be a regular little beauty, with a touch here and there. I shan't let anyone see you till you're done, and then we'll burst upon them like Cinderella and her godmother going to the ball," said Belle, in her persuasive tone. May couldn't refuse the offer so kindly made, for a desire to see if she would be a little beauty, after touching up, caused her to accept and forgot all her former uncomfortable feelings towards the Moffats. On Thursday evening, Belle shut herself up with her maid, and between them they turned Meg into a fine lady. They crimpled and curled her hair. They polished her neck and arms and some fragrance powder, touched her lips with coralline salve to make them redder, and Hortense would have added a soupçon of rouge If Meg had not rebelled, they laced her into a sky blue dress, which was so tight she could hardly breathe, and so low in the neck, if modest. Meg blushed at herself in the mirror. A set of silver filigree was added, bracelets, necklace, brooch, even earrings. A cluster of tea rosebuds at the bosom, and the rocher re oh my gosh recolonized Meg to the display on her pretty white shoulders, and a pair of high-heeled blue silk boots satisfied the last wish of her heart. A lace handkerchief, a plummy fan, and a bouquet in the silver holding finished her off. Mademoiselle esta chante tres jolie, is she not? Cried Hortense. Come and show yourself, said Miss Bell, leading the way to the room where the others were waiting. As Meg went rustling after, with her long skirt trailing, her earrings tingled, her curls waving, and her heart beating, she felt as if her fun had really begun at last, for the mirror had plainly told her that she was a little beauty. She was very soon discovered that there is a charm about fine clothes which attracts a certain class of people. Several young ladies who had taken no notice of her before were very affectionate. All of a sudden, several young gentlemen who had only stared at her at the other party asked to be announced, and several old ladies inquired who she was with an air of interest. She heard Miss Moffat reply, and one of them, Daisy March, father of colony in the army, one of their families, for reverses the fortune, you know. Inmate friend of Lauren's, sweet creature. I assure you, my Ned is quite a wild about her. The queer feeling did not pass away, but she imagined herself acting a new part of the fine lady, and so got on pretty well, though, and the tight dress gave her a side ache, and the train kept getting under her feet, and she was in a constant fear lest her earrings would fly off. She was flirting her fan and laughing at the freebill jokes of the young gentleman, who tried to be witty, when she suddenly stopped laughing and looked confused, for just opposite she saw Laurie. He was staring at her with a surprise of disapproval also. She thought, for though he bowed and smiled, yet something in his honest eyes made her blush, and wish she had her old dress on. She saw Belle nudge Annie, and both glanced from her to Laurie. Silly creatures put such thoughts into my mind. I won't care for it, and let it change me a bit, thought Meg, and rustled across the room to shaking hands with her friends. I am glad you came, for I was afraid you wouldn't, she said with her most grown-up air. Joe wanted me to come and tell her how you looked, so I did, answered Laurie. What shall you tell her? Asked Meg, full of courtesy, to know his opinion of her. Oh my goodness. Okay. I shall say I didn't know you, for you look so grown up, and unlike yourself, I'm quite afraid of you, he said, fumbling at his glove button. How absurd of you. The girls dressed me up for fun, and I rather like it. Wouldn't Jo stare if she saw me? Yes, I think she would, returned Laurie gravely. Don't you like me so? Asked Meg. No, I don't, was a blunt reply. Why not? In the anxious tone. He glanced at her frizzled hair, bare shoulders, and fantastically trimmed dress, with an expression that ambushed her more than his answer, which had not a practical of his usual politeness about it. I don't like fuzz or feathers. That was altogether too much from the lad younger than herself, and Meg walked away saying pitifully, "You are the rudest boy I ever saw." Feeling much ruffled, she went and stood at the quiet window to cool her cheeks. As she stood there, Mr. Lincoln passed by, and she heard him saying to his mother, "They are making a fool of that little girl. I wanted you to see her, but they had spoiled her entirely. She's nothing but a doll tonight." She leaned her forehead on the cool pane and stood half hidden by the curtains, and turning, she saw Laurie looking pendant as he said, "Please forgive my rudeness to come and dance with me. I'm afraid it will be too disagreeable to you," said Meg, trying to look offended. "Not a bit of it. I am dying to do it. Come, I'll be good. I don't like your gown, but I do think you are just splendid." And he waved his hands as if words failed to express his admiration. Meg smiled and relighted and whispered as they stood waiting to catch the time, "Take care my skirt doesn't trip you up. In the plague of my life I was a goose to wear it." Away they went, fleeting and gracefully, for having practiced at home, they were well matched, and a blunt young couple were a pleasant sight to see, and they twirled merrily around and around, feeling more friendly than ever after they tiffed. "Laurie, I want you to do me a favor, will you?" said Meg, as he stood fanning her when her breath came out. "Won't I?" said Laurie with accuracy. "Please, don't tell them at home about my dress tonight. They won't understand the joke, and it will worry mother." "Then why did you do it?" said Laurie's eyes so plainly that Meg hastily added, "I shall tell them myself about it and fess to mother how silly I've been. But I'd rather do it myself, so you'll not tell, will you?" "I give you my word I won't. Here comes Ned Moffat. What does he want?" said Laurie, knitting his back brow. "He put his name down for the 3 dances, and I suppose he's coming for them." "What a bore," said Meg, assuming a languished air, which amused Laurie immensely. He did not speak to her again until supper time, when he saw her drinking champagne with Ned and his friend Fisher, who were behaving like a pair of fools. As Laurie said to himself, "You'll have a splitting headache tomorrow if you drink much of that." "I wouldn't. Meg, your mother doesn't like it, you know," he whispered. "I'm not Meg tonight. I'm a doll who does all sorts of crazy things. Tomorrow I shall put away my fuss and feathers and be a good again." "Wish tomorrow was here then," muttered Laurie, walking off. Meg danced and flirted, chatted and giggled as the other girls did, romping in the way of scandalized Laurie, who looked on and meditated a lecture, but he got no chance to deliver it, for Meg kept away from him till he came to say good night. "Remember," she said, "try to smiling, for the splitting headache had already begun." "Silence, à la mort," replied Laurie with a melodramatic flourish as he went away. This little bit of byplay excited Annie's courtesy, but Meg was too tired for gossip and went to bed feeling as if she had been a masquerade. She was sick all the next day, and on Saturday went home quiet, used up her fortnight's fun. "How is a nice place, though it isn't splendid," said Meg, looking about her with a restful expression as she sat with her mother and Joe on Sunday evening. "I'm glad to hear you say so, dear, for I am afraid home would seem dull and poor to you after your fine quarters," replied her mother, who had given her many anxious looks that day. Meg had told her adventures gaily, and said what a charming time she had, but something still seemed to weigh upon her spirits, and when the younger girls were gone to bed, she sat staring at the fire, saying little, and looking worried. As the clock struck 9 and Joe proposed bed, Meg suddenly lifted her chair and taking Beth's stool, leaning her elbow on her mother's knee, saying bravely, Marmee, I want to fess. I thought so. What is it, dear? Shall I go away? Asked Joe discreetly. Of course not. I am ashamed to speak of it before the children, but I want you to know all of the dreadful things I did at the Moffats. We are prepared, said Miss March, smiling. I told you they rigged me up. I didn't tell you that they powdered and squealed and frizzled and made me look like a fashion plate, Laurie thought. I was proper, and one man called me a doll. Is that all? Asked Joe. No. I drank champagne and romped and tried to flirt and was altogether amberly. There is something more, I think. And Miss March smoothed his soft cheek, which suddenly grew rosy, as Meg answered slowly, Yes, it is very silly, but I want to tell it, because I hate to have people say such things about us and Laurie. Then she told the various bits of gossip she had heard at the Moffats, and as she spoke, Joe saw her mother fold her lips tightly. Well, if this isn't the greatest rumbish I ever heard, cried Joe, ignitedly. Just wait till I see Annie Moffat, and I'll show you how to settle such ridiculous stuff. The idea having plans and being kind of Laurie because he's rich and may marry us by and by. Won't he shout when I tell him what those silly things say about us? If you tell Laurie, I'll never forgive you. You mustn't, must she, mother? Said Meg, looking distressed. No, never repeat the foolish gossip, and forget it as soon as you can, said Miss March gravely. I was very unwise to let you go among people who I know so little, kind, I say, but worldly, and full of these vaguer ideas about young people. I am sorry for the mischief this visit may have done you, Meg. Don't be sorry. I'll forget all the bad and remember only the good, for I did enjoy the great deal. I'll not be sentimental and dissatisfied, mother, but it is nice to be praised and admired, and I can't help saying I liked it, said Meg. That is perfectly natural and quite harmless, if the likely does not become a passion and lead one to do foolish things. Learn the value of praise, which is worth having, and excited admiration, and excellent people by being modest as well as pretty Meg. Jo stood with her hands hiding her, looking perplexed, for it was a new thing to see Meg blushing and talking about admiration, and Jo felt as if her sister had grown up and was drifting away from her own into the world where she could not follow. Mother, do you have plans? As Miss Moffat said, asked Meg bashfully. Yes, my dear, all mothers do. I am ambitious for you, but not to marry rich men merely because they are rich. I'd rather see you poor men's wives, if you were happy, than queens and thrones without a self-respect and peace. Poor girls don't stand any chance, Belle says, sighed Meg. Then we'll be old maids, said Jo stoutly. Right, Jo, better be happy old maids than unhappy wives, said Miss March decidedly. Don't be troubled, Meg. Poverty seldom daunts the signature lover. One thing remember, my girls, mother is always ready to be your confidant, father, to be your friend, and both of us trust that our daughters, whether married or single, will be the pride of comfort of our lives. We will, Marmee, we will, cried both, with all their hearts, as she bade them with a good night. And that is the end of chapter 9. I will see you guys in chapter 10. Thank you for listening, guys.